Hi, we're back. We had the luxury of, while Scott was talking, pulling up some stats we have from some other presentations and getting on that Google machine, just to pull down some stats to answer your question of why. I think you're right. We all walked in here and assumed everybody's on this bandwagon, but it's one of those things where, people weren't even sure if the internet was going to stick around, and I think it's here to stay. And now with social media as well, and I just pulled these, so I'm going to read them to you, but social media users are 83% more likely to be brand loyal than non-users. So the people who are engaging with you on social media are the ones who are going to become your brand advocates, much more so than those who aren't. 90% of consumers trust peer reviews, and that's really, if you think about it, what social media is. It's peers talking to peers about things, and only 14% trust advertising anymore. So even as we look at some of the bigger companies and small businesses, they're shifting their dollars towards social, where they can really engage with their consumers rather than traditional advertising. More adults use social networks than adults who do not. So people are definitely on this bandwagon now, and the train's going down the tracks. And then social lead conversion, so if you're thinking about businesses, if you're thinking about swimmers into your clubs, it's 13% higher than any traditional types of leads conversion that you're looking at. So it's definitely a wave and a movement. And again, to Matt and Scott's points, it's a way to engage, which is really nice. People like to be talked to rather than talked at. And social really allows you to do that. On the flip side of it, to Matt's point about journalism and kind of the demise of newspapers, there are the same number of journalism jobs today at US newspapers as there were in 1978. So if you think about how there was a rise, it's now a decline, and 1 in 3 newsroom jobs have been eliminated since that peak in 1989. So it's, for those of us who still love to pick up the paper, it's sad stats, but it is proof to that question of why should we be doing this? So, if you've got naysayers at your club who aren't sure, we wanted to just give you some of those stats so that you can share them. So I think that's that. And then as far as what we're going to cover in this session, we're going to do a little icebreaker. My team always makes fun of me. We might be the best place to work, but they still make fun of me because I love to do icebreakers. So we're going to do a little icebreaker. Then we'll go again through kind of the facts and figures, purpose and audience again of Twitter, content strategy, how to measure success, and a few other, just like I said, youth sports organizations that are doing it well. Matt mentioned Meerkat earlier, and we've heard some questions about Meerkat and also the newest one, Periscope, and so we're going to talk about that too. So just know that hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions, and we will leave time for Q&A too. So icebreaker time.
Icebreaker. So we've seen some tweets and people tweeting and that type of thing, and we'd like to get some audience participation. Show of hands, how many of you or your clubs are on Twitter? Okay, cool. So just curious, I know that we've been using the SwimBiz hashtag, so to sort of, this is also a chance for us to talk about how hashtags work. But if you're willing and you'd like to tweet out your least or most or both favorite social network and why on your Twitter account, and then use the hashtag SwimBizSocial, not SwimBiz, but SwimBizSocial. We'll talk for a second and allow you all to kind of tell us what your favorite or least favorite social networks are, but while we do that, I want to talk about hashtags and use this as an example of how hashtags work.
And they're going to flip and show the stream, so go ahead and on your mobile phone or your iPad.
Yeah,
tweet.
So here's the current stream of a search for hashtag SwimBizSocial. And what basically for hashtag 101, Matt and his team just got back from South by Southwest Interactive in Austin. We were down there as well. It was our 5th year down there. Twitter basically became the name that it is because of that conference. And they launched in like October, November of 2000, I think it was 6. And in March of 2007, a bunch of tech geeky people started using Twitter as a way to converse in 140 characters or less. What these people found is you could search within Twitter for anything, any word. You could search for the word and. You could search for the word USA Swimming. And what they found is to be very, very narrow and specific. No word starts with a hashtag. No word starts with a number sign. So what they were doing is, if they had a coding session, they would put hashtag coding. And that way anybody who was talking about coding and specific to South by Southwest would be funneled into this search populated field, much like what we're doing here, which is we're taking the SwimBiz hashtag, but we're adding the word social. There's literally nobody out there that has used this hashtag previously. When we searched for it, nothing came up. And so if you are tweeting, eventually some of this will come up. But that's how it came about, is basically a bunch of geeky tech people saying when you search for something, if you just put a number sign in front of it, that's going to make it extremely specific and that type of thing. So we'll give a couple minutes here to wait for anybody else to tweet out to see if that populates. And while we do so, I know there were questions about the different social networks and how they all work and that type of thing. So I'd like to take a humorous moment to give you an anecdote. If you think of it, social networks as donuts, here's the differences. Facebook would be I like donuts. Twitter would be I'm eating a hashtag donut. Instagram is here's a vintage photo of a donut. Foursquare would be this is where I eat my donuts. LinkedIn, it would be my skills include donut eating. And of course, Google Plus is I'm a Google employee who eats donuts. So anyway, that's just some humorous differences between social networks. But here's Matt saying his bias creeping in his Twitter. Absolutely personal favorite social network. We've got favorite social media, Twitter, again. We have Twitter, of course, because we're all using Twitter, so that makes sense. Twitter because my mom doesn't have it. That's great. I like that one. Least favorite, Instagram, because the cool kids are way better at it than I am. I like that one, too. It's kind of annoying when people know more stuff than you do. I still like Facebook best, use Twitter, learning to love Instagram, but wish you could link out of the post. Yeah, that's one of the issues with Instagram, is especially for brands, is you can't, in your description, you can't include links to anything. It won't make a live hyperlink. The way I've seen brands get around that on Instagram is, hey, we're having a photo caption contest, click on the link in our bio to go to the page. So that's the one way to use Instagram, to click on something to go elsewhere. But anyway, some good. Twitter's too cluttered. That's interesting. I've heard people refer to Twitter as kind of an echo chamber, because somebody will tweet something out and then 50,000 people retweet it, and it's just kind of, that's the same thing I heard. But we're going to talk a little bit about this Twitter for news. I like what Tina said there. It is a very in the now platform. It's kind of in real time, and so we'll talk a little bit about that when it comes to Twitter, strategy and that type of thing. Twitter's my least favorite. Sorry, Matt. Hashtag sorry, Matt. It's probably
Nice.
That's a pretty good one. I like that. Instagram because it's easy. I like that answer as well. Allows for pictures and videos and some cool editing, and it's pretty simple. I like that. Twitter rocks. Instagram is cool. Help me become a little artist. Yeah, I like that. So anyway, fun exercise just to get people, and it's highlighting how a hashtag works. Basically, that page was set up, and it was just a search for the specific hashtag, so you can kind of have a real-time conversation about how things work in Twitter.
Does that help hashtags make sense, if anybody wasn't clear? Hope so. So when we talk about facts and figures again, the number of people using Twitter has increased by more than 50 million in the past year. So there are a lot of people adopting Twitter very rapidly. The average person follows 5 or more businesses, and over a third of them will buy from a brand they follow. So again, it goes back to that brand loyalty on social media. 56% of the monthly active users are tweeting, and the rest are just lurkers. That's also an interesting one. So about half of the people are on Twitter, and we'll talk about it. It is a great way to aggregate news and information, even if you don't want to be out there kind of actively tweeting. And then again, 63% regard their smartphone as their primary tweeting device. So when you think about how many people are on mobile and what they're using it for, Twitter's a big one. And it is really easy, as you guys just saw, to tweet from your phones.
I think some of that's the real-time news aspect, right? I just found out that Michigan State beat Louisville and made it to the Final Four.
Oh,
I found
sorry
out via
if you
Twitter.
were recording that.
Sorry to ruin anybody's recording. Yeah, spoiler alert.
Recording that.
But that's where a lot of us go to find out this type of news. When I have a 15-minute break in between meetings at work, I don't go to USA Today's homepage. I don't go to KUSA's homepage. I go to Twitter and I see what's happening. And that's a really big use of it. And I think in the moment type of news is the accepted general use of Twitter. A couple of notes that I want to use as far as trends on the platform, and I might be speaking in the weeds here a little bit, but recently, I think within the past year or two, Twitter made the platform way more visual. It used to be that you would have to click on a link to a photo and go out, and as we've heard from the Instagram users, when you upload a photo to Twitter now, it actually shows it in the feed, in the news feed of the person. So when you're scrolling, you see that photo, and that helps the engagement, that people stop on those photos. It's visually appealing. They're testing right now autoplay on videos so that you don't have to click click play, so that when, same thing as photos, when you scroll through it, it's what Facebook does. When you upload a video to Twitter, it automatically starts playing a video. That's super interesting for marketers as well, because we know that, I don't know the exact stat off the top of my head, but when people see video, they inherently stop to watch it, whatever is going on. And so that's something that Twitter's coming out with. And then
Especially if there's a cat in it.
Especially if there's a cat in it, yeah, exactly. And Matt mentioned Meerkat. It's an app that you can download. I want to touch on that quickly because it's just kind of a trend thing, but it flows into that video aspect. Meerkat is a live streaming app. So if I go into Meerkat and I link it up to my Twitter account, it allows me to type in what I'm doing and then literally hit stream video, and I could sit here and video all of you, and anyone could go onto my Twitter account and click that link and see a live stream of what's going on right now. From a swimming standpoint, if you have a finals, you don't have a TV station there, or you want to go ahead and stream it live, you could actually do that. The downside to Meerkat is it is real time and it ends when it ends. So if somebody sees your tweet that says live now, hashtag Meerkat, the state swim finals, and they go and click on it, and your 3-minute race is already over, they're not going to be able to. What they're going to see is video is no longer available. Meerkat kind of just hit huge at South by Southwest a week ago, and in the background, Twitter went ahead and purchased a company called Periscope. So this is where you get into like all these terms and apps and things. Periscope is basically Meerkat, except they've updated it so that they have a place to house that video at all times. So you can go back and click on it and watch it after it's already happened. And Twitter owns it, so they give Periscope the API or the fire hose to all of their information, so that it probably will live play eventually in the stream, and Meerkat's a third party that competes with that. So my theory is eventually Meerkat will be squashed by Twitter, or they'll find a different way to work through Facebook or to work through something else, but Twitter has bought a different company called Periscope. So play with those, mess around with them. You can't really break it. We're a best place to work, so we had beer club on Friday, and we periscoped the beer club just to try it out and see how it was working. And we had Ben, our graphic designer, who's a home brewer, and was talking about the brown ales that we were drinking. And we had, I don't know, I think it was like 7 or 8 people check into our Periscope and check out the live stream of what was going on at our office on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. So there's just some trends going on with Twitter and a few stats from the platform itself.
So you saw this before when we were talking about Facebook, nothing new, but again, with Twitter, it might be a little different than how you use Facebook. So think about what's your personality on there, and again, what's the purpose, who's your audience, how are you going to measure success, and how frequently do you want to be posting if you choose to use it for posting and not necessarily just kind of research and learning. Hear you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think we've all touched on this now in different forms here today, but Twitter's more real time. We were giving a presentation to a group on Friday night, and someone said, I don't get Twitter because I have to be kind of looking at it when it happens, and there's just too much in my feed to ever know what's going on. And that's Twitter. It's happening real time, and it's kind of, if you see it when it's happening, that's great. Some people do go back and scan throughout the day to see what they might have missed, but there's a lot of information, and the more that you follow, the more that's coming into your fire hose. So it is kind of more real time, breaking news. Here's what's happening now. And it's also more on one-on-one interaction with other organizations and clubs in the community. So we talked a little bit about how from Facebook on your computer you can't tag another business or club necessarily, but on Twitter you can, and you can, you get those acknowledgments when you get tagged by someone else, and you jump in and you favorite it or you retweet it or you send a message back to them, and it allows a lot more of that interaction with others. And then you guys again have to determine what's the purpose for you for Twitter. Is it recruitment? Is it promoting your successes? And if so, to whom? Are you preaching to the choir, or do you want to let the rest of the community know what you've been doing? Is it gathering news and information? So personally, and this is, again, I'm not saying right or wrong, but I typically on a normal day use Twitter more to gather information. So I create lists, and if you do the same, maybe you create a list of your own athletes or of competitors, of alumni from your club. Swimming publications, Sports Illustrated, following USA Swimming, following Safe Sports, so you've got information that you can share with your clubs. But that is pretty much how I use Twitter on a day-to-day basis. When I go to a conference like a South by Southwest Southwest Interactive or a social media conference, I use the conference more for the streams and the hashtags to follow what's going on at that conference, because there's usually so much going on I can't take part in all of it. So I kind of share my key learnings and I see what else is happening at that conference during that time. So I use Twitter proactively when I am at a kind of a learning type of opportunity and I want to share information and see what others are getting out of it. And then the rest of the time I use it more to gather those lists and information and see what's happening in things I'm interested in. And I think Twitter's a lot easier than Facebook to kind of turn on and off when you're on it, because the real-time nature and there's so much happening.
I think that's a good point to make. I mean, if you look at your organizations and how you're managing who the audience is and what the purpose is, that's the big difference right there, because there's going to be a use for each one of these if you have the bandwidth. Personally, I do the same thing personally. I try to put a filter through if I take a photo on my phone of something. My Facebook is my friends and family. My Instagram is more about craft beer and snowboarding, not in that order. My Twitter is more about, I'm Denver PR guy, so it's more about public relations and social media and that type of thing. And so when I have something to share, a piece of content to share, I actually put it through that filter in my mind first, because my audience is different on each one. It's my mom on Facebook, it's colleagues on Twitter, and it's people who like outdoors on Instagram. And so I actually put that through a filter before I post those things. So deciding what those are, much like we talked about with Facebook, is I think going to be an important part when you talk about either starting or refining your Twitter strategy. Yeah. So again, we look at it this way. You don't have to necessarily look at it this way, but it helps us identify how we're using the platform and what we're putting out there. The tone, sometimes it can be newsy. It could be, friendly and just sharing others' information, that type of thing. The frequency. This is what, to what Ramona's saying. I think there's a larger room for forgiveness if you're using Twitter somewhat infrequently than there is on, say, a Facebook. You can use it in real time to announce results, to announce what's happening at your meets, what time practice is starting, that type of thing. Or you can use it more frequently and just find good content to share. Again, one of the questions that we get often is just the management of the platform and how do you consume all of that information as it's coming in. I would look toward Twitter lists, and if you use something like a tweet deck, which is a management of your Twitter accounts, Tweet Deck is the name of it. It allows you to set up columns that are either listed by interest or keywords or that type of thing. So you could make an alumni column, and that is a column that only spits out the feeds of all the people that have been through your swim club. You could have a current swimmer column, so that you create this list and you put it in there so that the only ones you see in that column are your current swimmers. It could be a partner, it could be coaches, it could be other swim clubs to get information. That's super useful to me from a time management standpoint, because I follow something like 2,600 different Twitter accounts. And so to organize that, I have a Denver media list, and I have a GroundFloor media colleagues, all my coworkers list, and we work with Oscar Blues Brewery, and so I have all the media that I've worked with Oscar Blues set into a list, so that if I have 15 minutes in between things, I can go and check out what those people have been saying on Twitter, and I'm not just scrolling through endless amounts of information on the actual news feed. And some of that comes back to the responsiveness. I would say, monitoring mentions. People are going to mention you just like they do on Facebook. It's up to you on how you want to handle that. I think it's good to interact with everybody. If you have a club that's big enough where you have a lot of interaction and a lot of people mentioning you, you can certainly use your own discrepancy on who you respond to and that type of thing. I'm sure USA Swimming gets tagged all the time in posts, and they probably have a set standard for who they respond to and how they monitor and how they respond to certain mentions and that type of thing. But it's good to set a standard, even if it's just within your own mind. That way you don't have to decide in real time and hem and haw or run it by people to get that approved on whether or not you're retweeting things that are mentioned. Some tips in general, the more active you are, the more followers you'll have, and that's the absolute truth. When I go down to South by Southwest, I'm about 10 times more active on Twitter than I am on my normal days, and I end up coming back with like 200 new followers. They'll probably unfollow me at some point because all that stuff I was talking about in Austin isn't what I'm talking about every day, but there's a definite correlation between how active you are and the number of followers you have. Asking yourself, what do people follow you for? That's that sort of purpose of your platform. Why are they following you? You can get a sense by looking through your followers. Is it all other swim clubs? Is it other swimmers? Is it media? That type of thing. And you can get a sense for who your audience is, and that will help you dictate what types of tweets you're sending out. Short links, that's going to help you measure things a little bit better if you include links. There is a website called bit.ly that allows you to shorten the link, bit.ly, that allows you to automatically shorten the link. You go in and post your long link, and it shortens it for you, and what that does is on the back end you can go and track and see how many people clicked on it and how much time they spent on your site and all of that stuff. It also gives you more characters to work with within Twitter. There's a number of those link shortening type applications out there. Photos, the visual thing, to Scott's presentation with Instagram, and the reason it's so popular, it's highly visual, and people are highly visual beings. The more photos you're including in your post, the more interaction you're going to get from those. And then being responsive and recycling tweets, it's much like we talked about with Facebook. There's infinite amounts of information out there. If you're following the right accounts and you're setting up lists to help you monitor for really good quality information, you can use that 80-20 rule where you're sending out relevant information for your followers, but not necessarily always talking about yourself, or if you're worried about, you know, being too braggadocious about yourself. Set up links with other, you know, USA Swimming, with other swim clubs, with some of the you know, national team swim members, because they're all on Twitter. They're all putting out information that could be fun for you to repurpose.
So here's just another tip. If you want to try to generate followers and get people engaged with your club, you can conduct a tweet chat. Has anybody here participated in or conducted a tweet chat? Or a couple people? Yeah, it's not super common unless you are in that world and you're interested in following something, and then you can really go down the rabbit hole, as we call it, the fun social media rabbit hole. But here's an example actually from USA Swimming. Matt mentioned the diversity efforts with Sigma Gamma Rho sorority, where they partnered up together and hosted a tweet chat. And then the example on the right is one that we conducted recently with Children's Hospital Colorado. They have an eating disorder center and wanted to get information out about the center and about tips for parents and families from physicians about identifying eating disorders in your kids. So the trick with tweet chats is, if you want to kind of grow your following, partnering with someone who's got a really good following and a good standing on Twitter, and combine so that they're promoting it to their users, you're promoting it to yours, and then you can combine during the tweet chat, and what you usually do is exponentially grow your following, again, to Jim's point of how he does it at South by Southwest. So there's different times and places where you can do that, but if you've got a goal beyond, you know, the competitive side of your club, where you really want to be shown as an expert in your community on safety in youth sports or water safety or something like that, and you want to partner with the community or with the city and do a tweet chat, you're on there basically live answering questions and providing information over a shortened period of time. And again, you use a hashtag so that everything's following along and everybody can see the information who knows about the tweet chat. So the key is promoting it in advance and having a really good partner, but it can be a great way to be kind of a thought leader and grow your following at the same time.
And tweet chats can be set up any number of ways. Usually there's a set that you see here, 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific time. Usually it's a set time, 1 hour, 2 hours. The beauty of it is you can also plan ahead and have your questions already set. There's 10 questions that allow for not only participation from the professional that you may have there. In this case, you know, have a national team member on as part of the swim chat, which is part of the whole overarching goal behind it, is to get her involved and give some insights into what she thinks about these things. We've done other tweet chats where, yes, there's an expert, but it might be more asking individuals their opinions. So you have 10 questions over 2 hours, and you ask them 10-minute increments. And just, you know, question 1 is, you know, what's your favorite part about the sport of swimming? And then people answer those questions and get a little more involved. The beauty of putting it in a time frame like that is more people join, because it's not just an ongoing thing. It's like, oh, I need to tune in at 4 o'clock on Sunday evening and figure out what's going on with this tweet chat. So highly successful for a lot of the brands that we worked with.
Success. What does it look like on Twitter? So there's a lot of things you can measure, and again, it goes back to what do you want people to do and what is success for you. But there are ways to kind of look through and find out who your top followers are, what the top tweets were. So again, what are people engaging in, and spend more time on that. I think it would, yeah, when we were at South by, I heard someone speak on more on leadership and culture, but they said, stop spending time trying to be average at trying to be good at something you'll only ever be average at, because it's just not in your wheelhouse, and be really good at things that you know that you're great at. So if there's things that aren't working on Twitter, abandon them. You don't have to do it. That's the great thing about social media, is it's kind of always in test mode. You've got ways to go back and look and see what's working, what's not working, where should we be spending our efforts to maximize our time, because everybody's busy. I doubt many of you have full-time social media staff sitting back there waiting to do all of this for you. So how do you make sure that what you're doing is really effective and you're spending your time well?
More logistically. I pulled these from my own account, and this was all from South by Southwest stuff, but this is what Twitter offers you for metrics. They give you the number of tweets that you've done over the period of time that you choose. This particular one is a 28-day summary. It gives you the number of impressions and the increase over the previous 28 days, profile visits, mentions, and followers, and everything's up here, as I mentioned, because I'm way more active when I'm down in Austin. My favorite thing was when my colleague John ran into Mark Cuban leaving a bar, and he actually had a Dirk shirt on, which is hilarious. But that got a lot of engagement because it was Mark Cuban, and he tagged the real Mark Cuban in the photo, or in the tweet, and people were retweeting it and posting and that type of thing. So you get your top tweets, you get your top followers, these types of things. It's nice when you do have more prominent people following your account. It may not be absolutely relevant 100% of the time for your swim clubs, but within your community, could you get some interaction from the mayor, of your town, because you're all there as part of the community, and your mayor probably has a decent following? Could you get local TV, anchors, media personalities, sports columnists, that type of thing? Interacting with them is going to be beneficial from a standpoint of extending your reach and getting your name out there a little bit more in branding.
Clicker. So again, these are just some good examples that we found, and I jotted down some notes of what we liked about these. But when you kind of look at them, this is Mesa Youth Sports, so they actually aggregate all of the different sports in Mesa, Arizona. But you see this is what's happening now, live action photos. You see the results, but not just results with smiling faces, because again, people like pictures. And then the links on the bottom right and within Twitter are the bit.ly links that Jim was mentioning. Go back. Sorry.
Whoops.
Use your little pointer thing.
I hit the head instead of the pointer. Technically.
So that's what a bit.ly link looks like that Jim was talking about. So, but again, they're linking to photos because people are so visual. So that's just one good example. And then this is, it's more on the coaching side, but this is Positive Coaching USA. And so they do a nice job of sharing information out that is inspirational and helpful, and using infographics. They use bit.ly links again too, and then really do a good job of being responsive and responding and following people and answering questions that are asked. So again, just kind of all the things we talked about rolled up into some organizations that might be relevant.
And if you want to be a resource for information, like we're talking more than just in season, I think you look at a tweet like this, and this is great. They probably follow PCA Chicago, featuring Doc Rivers. They probably follow that account. They saw it coming through their feed. It's a relevant piece of information for this account, and they tweeted it out. It didn't take any more effort than a tweet. They didn't have to come up with original content. They didn't have to sit there and think about what am I going to tweet next. It's relevant to their followers, and they just put it out there and put a link to it as part of their content plan.